Welcome to LeaderCast, episode 241. You're listening to LeaderCast, Transforming Missions podcast with Tim Bias and Sarah Thomas, providing you with resources to navigate the challenges and opportunities of courageous, Christ-centered leaders.
Hey, is anybody listening?
Now, that may sound like a funny question to ask on a podcast, but we're not asking if people are listening to the podcast. We know there's plenty of you who download these episodes.
If you're hearing these words, you've accessed the podcast. But you'll quickly come to understand that what we're focusing on isn't hearing, it's listening.
As a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode at transformingmission.org/241. This is the first in a series on the essential leadership skill of listening. Now, you may be asking, why are we talking about listening? Isn't that something basic? Yeah, it is. But it seems there's been a continual decline in people's ability, capacity, and desire to listen to one another. We hope this series will help you tend to your own listening in leadership. Tim, I think you're going to start us off with a few words from someone that may be familiar to many of us.
Yes, Leonard Sweet, in his book Out of the Question and Into the Mystery, writes these words: "We know how to save the world. We just don't realize that we know what we know. The way to save the world is not through more rules to live by, but through right relationships to live for. People are fast losing the art of being with one another." I think Sweet cuts to the chase about the challenges of listening. So let me offer an example to get us started. You've likely experienced this recently in a meeting, a church meeting, perhaps. There have been times I've been in meetings where information is being shared. The people in attendance at the meeting are giving their opinions and offering their advice. That sounds like a church meeting, doesn't it? The group is seeking direction, and although everyone in attendance has something to say, not everyone in attendance is heard. One of the people who offers something that's maybe even important isn't even acknowledged. It really is a good idea, but in fact, it is as if that person is not even present in the meeting. You know those kinds of meetings. No one's being malicious. It's just part of the meeting. Even my attempts to getting this person recognized were dismissed as the group discussed other things, moved on, as if that person had not said a word. As I've reflected on this experience, I know this is not new for those historically marginalized. People have been fighting for a place at the table for a long time, struggling to be heard, to be taken seriously, way too long.
So if you'll allow me to ask a few questions, why is it that we recognize some people, but not all people? Why is it that we look over some people without even noticing we've done so? And if we do this with individuals, do we do this with the community and our neighbors as well? So at the risk of asking questions and then beginning to answer my own questions, here's where I begin. We live in a time when we are more willing to talk than we are to listen. And this is leading to disconnection with one another and disconnection between the church and the community. So today we want to give you 7 reasons, and there's probably way more, that people don't listen to you. And we invite you, as we walk through these 7 reasons, to consider how you're doing in your listening. Now, please hear me. These are not excuses to continue to not listen. These are cautious reminders for all of us to consider.
So here are 7 reasons people don't listen to you. Number 1. Drum roll, please. The number 1 reason: people are too busy. It's not even about time. People are preoccupied with their own thoughts, needs, technology, worries, problems. The list goes on. Some are too busy talking about themselves. I like that. Too busy talking about themselves to listen to others.
So you're saying, Tim, this wouldn't be a good time to tell a personal story?
You were listening, Sarah.
Okay, number 2, the second reason people don't listen to you. People don't listen to you because people don't know how to listen. Listening is the ability to relate to people with a genuine interest and compassion for them. It is not easy and it takes practice. It does not come naturally for most people. The noise in our lives, the constant text messages, emails, reminders on our Apple Watches, social media notifications, and many more are constant interruptions. I know someone who recently told me she puts her phone on focus mode when she's in meetings with others. Why? Because it helps her to listen. She's practicing listening to be a better listener. So do you even know how to listen?
Number 3, people think faster than they talk. This leads to them not listening. It's really the way we're put together. Our brains can receive spoken words and still have time for thinking. Anyone sitting through a sermon on Sunday morning knows that to be true. Making grocery lists or what we're going to have for dinner at the same time of listening to the sermon. We have those mental sidetracks. We miss what's being said, and so we're formulating our opinions without taking seriously what's been said. We might also call this selective listening. People grab onto one word or thought, and they fail to listen to the rest of what's being said. And in fact, they're so ready to respond to what they think is being said, they don't hear anything else going on.
So reason number 4, people don't listen when they don't hear what they want to hear. When someone hits on an issue or prejudice that irks us, we stop listening and begin rehearsing our objections without listening to what is being said. Now, you're probably saying, well, Sarah, that's listening 101. Don't formulate your response while someone else is speaking. Yes, that is listening 101. So if you are formulating your response while someone else is speaking, you're not listening.
And reason number 5, you don't particularly care for the person who's speaking. Now, in this situation, we form our opinions and dismiss someone without giving them the opportunity to be heard. And I actually think that's what was going on in the meeting I attended that I referenced earlier.
Reason number 6. This one may be obvious, but I've come to realize because of everything that we've mentioned in 1 through 5, people don't listen when there isn't a logical progression to what is being said. Let me say that another way. People need verbal cues or stories to follow the spoken word. Verbal cues are things like the numbers we've given to walk through these reasons. And then stories, you know stories because we are story people. So as long as a story has a character or a concept that is somewhat relatable, people engage and listen. Bottom line, people don't listen if you're talking in circles, are long-winded, or generally confusing.
Number 7, when someone demonstrates they haven't listened to others, people stop listening to them. It's a vicious cycle. I have one simple phrase for that. Stop it. You're a leader. It's your responsibility to listen. We've given you 7 reasons people don't listen to what you're saying. And we're intentionally not solving these challenges for you because there's only one real way to address it. Practice listening. So next week, we'll offer 5 characteristics of good listeners.
So as we come to the end of this episode, prompting you to think about why people aren't listening to you, Tim, what words of wisdom would you like to offer?
Well, Sarah, I'm growing to understand that when we don't listen, we actually aren't failing the people around us as much as we're failing God. I think it's important to remember that God has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth. How's that for being obvious? Could it be that we have opportunities to listen more than we do to speak? God's given us the capacity to listen, but we misuse that capacity when we're too busy, too distracted, too preoccupied, too privileged to hear what other people are saying. So when we don't listen, we shut ourselves off from one another. We give up the opportunity to learn from one another, to understand one another, to love one another. We give up the opportunity to develop the relationships that help us become who God has created us to be. So I think Leonard Sweet is onto something when he writes, the way to save the world is to write relationships to live for. So Sarah, I think this still comes in at the place where I think I become a better person because of the people who I intersect or interact with every day. And part of that interaction isn't just seeing somebody, it's actually listening to.
So once again, Tim calls us back to relationships. It's in relationship that we listen to one another. So you may need to listen to those 7 reasons again and ask yourself, how am I doing at listening to the people closest to me, to the people I lead alongside, and maybe even to the people who are different from you? You can find the 7 reasons along with the Leonard Sweet reference on the show notes page at transformmission.org/podcast. And you're looking for episode 241. And this episode is a great example of why we've said for well over a year, who you are is how you lead. Bye for now.